Adam, I want you to imagine a child who has never seen the world.
Like in a poetic sense?
I mean literally. Never seen a toy, never seen a tree, not even the sky. For 13 years, Genie Wiley's entire world was 4 dingy walls, a blacked out bedroom, and a few plastic objects.
Jesus.
By day, she was strapped to a potty chair, and by night, she was zipped into a sleeping bag like a straitjacket. And then, when by pure chance, when her almost blind mother stumbled into a welfare office, staff thought that they were looking at a 7-year-old.
I thought she was 13.
And here's the thing, rescue should have been the beginning of a recovery. Instead, it was the beginning, Adam, of something else. She was now a case study, a scientific prize.
So they saved her, only to then study her. That's awful.
What does it mean to save someone if no one protects them afterwards? Welcome to The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating things. We're a weekly variety podcast that gives you just enough information to stand your ground at any social gathering.
We explore strange true stories from the worlds of true crime, dark history, scandals, mysteries, and remarkable people.
I'm Kyle Reese, your ringmaster for this week.
And I'm Adam Cox, the audience flatulence analyst for this week.
Oh, an analyst, not like someone preventing flatulence, disturbing the acts.
No, I can't stop it. But what I can do is try and prevent it for the future. So of all the food stalls and stuff like that, I can then work out what food give people gas to try and prevent future flatulence.
So the Mexican stand is definitely out.
Yes.
Pinto beans, not on my watch.
We learned that very quickly.
That's the thing though, when, especially in the winter, when you're in a tent, obviously they're trying to keep everything warm, but there's a lot of breathing air happening, a lot of humidity. It's not a nice place at the end of it because that kind of sticks on you, do you know what I mean? And you don't want farts included with that.
No, it's like going on an airplane, There's just a certain smell you're like, what went down here?
Exactly. You just want to wash that off once you land. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you get a whole tan, I swear, from being on an
tan! No. Oh, God. Moving on. Guys, if you're new to our show and you want to support us, then really the absolute best way that you can do that is to join us over at Patreon, because signing up is free and you'll get access to next week's episode a whole 7 days before anyone else.
And for as little as $5 a month, you can become a fellow freak of the show, which will unlock our entire back catalogue.
But guys, let's be honest, because the real reason that people sign up as a certified freak or a big top tier member is that they get access to our exclusive Compendium keychain. And why wouldn't you want that? When you're not listening to the pod, we can be there with you, wherever you are, dangling right there.
Your crotch.
That's it.
Should we have a moment of silence for the crotch?
A moment of silence or rejoicing. We should have a sound effect of 2 keychains dangling together every time we say this. Should I see if I can rustle something up?
Yeah. And lastly, guys, please follow us on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review, because your support helps others find us and keeps these amazing stories coming.
If you're on Spotify, just click that little rating button and leave us a 5-star rating, ideally.
And follow, of course. That also helps.
And if you want to share the love, go to our website and leave us a little review, a little cheeky review. If you're on Apple, just do it straight in the app. Andy. Adam, that is enough of the housekeeping, because today on the Compendium, we're actually diving into an assembly of silence, curiosity, cruelty, and the terrible cost of being treated like a question instead of a child.
Treated like a question? How do you treat someone like a question?
Adam, I want you to imagine a child who has never seen the world. And I'm not talking about in a poetic sense. I'm talking literally. Imagine a child who has never seen a toy, never seen a tree, not even the sky. A child who has never celebrated a birthday, never opened a Christmas present, never even left their house. And by the way, there's nothing mentally or physically wrong with this child. They have all the faculties of typical human development. But then, Adam, I want you to think about what that would do to that child when they finally emerge into the world.
It's like when someone is blind, but then they regain their sight.
Yeah. Almost like you've been abducted by aliens and just dropped on a random planet, right?
Yeah.
Well, Adam, for decades, psychologists and linguists have actually debated this very idea. How would this scenario impact human development? How much of who we are and what we are capable of is given to us within a very narrow window of time when we are toddlers? Language, speech, I'm talking attachment, movement, social behaviors, all those things, right? Most of us learn these things so early and so gradually that by the time we're old enough to question them, they're kind of like second nature. But what if you never got the chance to learn those things? What if no one ever spoke to you or taught you how to ask for food or seek comfort or even understand what was polite and what was not?
This sounds like almost a feral child in a way.
Well, Adam, this debate did stay a debate for decades because obviously to test this would be a massive ethical violation. It would be child abuse.
Yeah, or any animal or human.
But Adam, that was until 1970 when a nearly blind mother accidentally walked into the welfare office in Los Angeles with her daughter. She was said to be 13 years old, but to the staff looking back at this little girl, she looked 7. But it wasn't her size that concerned them. It was a strange way that she seemed to move, this uncanny way that she held her hands limply in front of her body, and also the wonderment at literally everything she saw in this really mundane social welfare office. Adam, it turned out that for 13 years, this little girl had been locked away by her parents. Her entire world was confined to 4 dingy walls of a blacked out bedroom where her only toys were a magazine and a thread spool.
What were these parents doing?
The conditions that she was kept in were horrific. By day, she was strapped to a potty. By night, she was strapped into a sleeping bag, unable to move. She was routinely punished for even making a sound, so much so that she was so neglected and abused that she never learned to speak, therefore didn't even learn to cry because she was so terrified.
She sounds more like a prisoner of war or something.
Yeah. Adam, today on the Compendium, I am going to tell you about the incredible true story of Genie Wiley. Now, I'm assuming, based on how inquisitive you were, you've not heard of this story before.
Don't think so. I don't know if I'm getting a flashback of a video that I may have seen of her, or I'm just confusing her with Donnie from the Wild Thornberrys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive here, because a lot of what we internalize when we're researching these stories, we pull upon things that we are familiar with. And when they were talking about how she walked with these hops and her hands bent at the elbow in front of her, all I could think of was Roger from American Dad. But sadly, it was more horrific than that.
I think that's the thing. This is actually a true story. Someone did this to a poor little
Someone
girl.
actually did this, yeah.
Or her parents did this. That's even worse.
And I did know the story about Genie from a movie that was actually made about her life. It was actually one of those movies, like I would mention if someone asked you, like, what's the earliest movie you ever remember watching? And I thought I watched it a lot earlier than actually was released. I thought it was like something that I watched maybe when I was like a preteen, but actually was released in 2001 and it was called The Mockingbird Don't Sing. And it followed basically the story of a young girl called Katie who, like Genie, was locked away in a room for 13 years with almost no human contact. But the story of her abuse, as horrific as it was actually more about what actually came after she was rescued and how she became kind of the rope in a game of tug of war between scientists who were desperate to study her. I really wanted to watch the film as part of this research, but also didn't want the dramatization of her story to cloud my understanding of the actual facts. But definitely, once we finished recording this episode, I think we should watch this tonight because there's a lot of key moments that always stand out when I think about this film, and we're going to go through a couple of them today.
So is it based on Genie?
It's her true story, but it's the retelling of it has been slightly dramatized, but the facts of what happened are the same. But Adam, today, I'm going to tell you, honestly, about the deeply sad story of Genie Wiley, a child hidden from the world for 13 years, and the uncomfortable question at the heart of all of this. When a case sits at the cusp of scientific knowledge, where do you draw the line between what is best for the victim and what will progress scientific understanding? But also, this story is really interesting from another standpoint because ordinarily we would call this a survival story, right? But survival stories usually come with the archetype overcoming adversity in a way, some kind of inspirational outcome at the end. But Adam, honestly, it's not the case for Ginny.
Well, she's a 13-year-old girl, and if she has known no other world, Is she fighting to be free? Because she doesn't know what else is out there, right?
She, at the time when she was being held captive, no, because exactly as you said, she didn't know any better. But even after she's rescued, she still doesn't have the capacity to ask for what she wants or even know what she needs. So she's completely at the mercy of all the people that are in charge of her care. And quite frankly, they put their scientific pursuits over her well-being, and it's so tragic.
That's really sad.
And so, Adam, I must say that this episode does come with a trigger warning. We are going to talk about severe child abuse and neglect. And sadly, it does not end in the uplifting way that we would like it to. But hey, maybe it does. The reality is we don't actually know. The best that we can hope for in this episode is to be left with a little bit of hope that Ginny is okay somewhere out there in the world.
It sounds like it's going to be a bit of a tough listen, but I'm interested to hear more about her story.
It is going to be a tough listen. And I think this is important because how her story is told in lecture halls and in academic papers, it's told in a very clinical sense. And I think that does the story a disservice. I think we need to understand the horrors of what's happened to this girl. We're not going to glorify it, but I think we need to also get an insight about the horrors of human nature, but also the incredible compassion that we are actually capable of. And I think a lot of the time in the retelling of Ginny's story, all of that is left out. And so, Adam, our story actually starts with Clark Wiley. That's Ginny's father and the man who would set in motion everything that will actually happen to Ginny. And like so many people capable of unspeakable abuse, Clark himself grew up in a fairly unstable environment. When he was 6, his father was killed when he was struck by lightning.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, isn't it, to get struck by lightning?
Yeah, what was he doing? Was he like fitting an aerial?
Well, yeah, you don't go outside.
Playing golf? Following this, though, to make ends meet, Clark's mother, Pearl, started running a brothel out of their home, which, as you can imagine, is not a great environment for a young child to grow up in, right?
No.
As a result, Clark is moved between various care homes and foster families over the years. One of the defining characteristics of Clark is that he seems to suffer from an aversion to noise. It is really overwhelming to him. It's not clear whether or not he had autism or maybe he was on the spectrum or had some kind of thing. I don't know all the isms out there. But
So any noise this is.
yeah, he just seemed to have an aversion from it. And this would have been in the 20s and 30s, so it probably wasn't that well understood if he did have some degree of autism. However, he's often described, though, as really withdrawing away from environments that even exhibited even a small rumble of sound. When Clark becomes a man, he ends up actually reconnecting with Pearl, and they come very close. Again, it's not clear why. Maybe he or she was trying to make up for the years of neglect and distance between them. But for whatever reason, Clark ends up worshipping his mother almost obsessively. He eventually, though, moves to Los Angeles to find work, and he settles in as a window and awning installer and also a general handyman. Honestly, even though Clark is the monster of this story, Adam, at this point, there are no red flags to suggest anything was amiss other than him having this strange aversion to noise.
That's weird to have this aversion. Is there a condition for this? Because I know certain frequencies or pitches and stuff like that can make people feel nauseous and stuff. But to have an aversion to all noise, how can you live with that?
I think as more and more young kids with Asperger's and autism do get diagnosed, I've seen people out there in public wearing kind of ear defenders. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if they had known a bit more about this at the time, maybe he might have been one of those kids.
Yeah, fair point.
Adam, overall, though, he is functional. Albeit very particular. He was productive. He didn't exhibit any signs of violence or volatility. And so when he is in Los Angeles, he meets a woman called Irene Oglesby. There is a huge gap between them. He is in his mid-40s. Irene, I think, is in her early 20s. They date for a while and eventually they get married. And soon after, they move to the suburbs where the people who knew them, they were just a regular married couple. They live a very strange existence, though, which is largely driven by Clark's noise aversion. It's something that Irene didn't really anticipate would be an issue when they got married, but Adam, their entire existence is just a stone-cold silent world. Irene is even forbidden from owning a radio or a TV.
Well, that's no fun. How does she get into this? And then did she know about his noise aversion? And then she moves in with him and then he tells her and then it's like, whoa.
I think it's just she didn't really anticipate what it would mean for their life. But also, I don't know, when I imagine their life and what it's like living in that house, it feels like just the color is drained from that environment.
Yeah.
Everything is dark. Everything is silence. It feels like their happiness is just void.
It reminds me of that Family Guy sketch. I think it was with Stewie. And he's like married to some old woman or something at the time. And he's reading a newspaper. And she, I don't know, makes the tiniest noise. And he like looks at her and gives her evils.
Gives her a darted look.
So I can imagine this poor woman, she's in this house. She stands on a floorboard and it creaks and she gets shouted at.
That's exactly it. She is at the point where she does try her very best to walk around the house as silently as she possibly can. And looking back at him, she later does describe her life as effectively ending on her wedding day.
Wow.
That's bad.
That's really bad and sad.
Clark, at the same time, he also expects Irene to maintain an extremely rigid domestic routine. She has to wake up at the same time every morning. Dinner had to be served at the same time every day. There was a time for laundry. There was a time for errands, a time for literally everything. Anything that threw off this routine, even the mailman unexpectedly knocking on the door was enough to infuriate Clark and wreck the entire day.
Oh God, he sounds like a nightmare.
Of course, he is abusive to her. He does beat her. It is not great. And as time goes on, Adam, Clark becomes more and more isolated from the outside world and expects Irene to follow suit. Like, neighbors see them less and less, and by the 1950s, they are almost completely closed off from the world. And while the silence was torture for Irene, her literal world was also closing in on her, not because she was confined to this house, but also, Adam, because she was also going blind.
Why?
Well, when she was a child, she had slipped and hit her head on a washing mangle. It's like an old-timey thing that you would use to dry clothes. Mm-hmm. Basically, this resulted in severe neurological damage. And by the time she was an adult, cataracts had started to form, and now she's completely blind in one eye and starting to go blind in the other. Her loss of vision also meant it was difficult for her to leave the house, which, of course, as you can imagine, someone like Clark, this suited him to a T.
Yeah, there's no excuse now for her not doing the chores or whatever.
But also, simple things like navigating the house became harder for her, especially to do that in silence.
I was going to say, you're going to be stumbling around, and that's not going to go down well, I bet.
And so she becomes more and more dependent on Clark, which only widens his control over her. When they got married, Irene also pictured a life with Clark where they would have had children, right? But honestly, this demand for absolute silence and his rigid routine that he demanded, coupled with her inability to care for a child now that she was going blind, forced her, quite frankly, to accept that children was not on the cards for them.
Do you think in some way that the way she was living almost brought on the blindness? I know obviously she had this injury, but I don't know. I just feel like she lived this quite reclusive life. I don't know. It's always a case of mind over matter. I just felt like she's come withdrawn and almost like an old woman very quickly.
Possibly. I mean, the resources do suggest that the cataracts and a loss of vision has come from this accident that she had when she was a kid. So it's not really a case of like, because she's become so reclusive. Mm-hmm. However, Adam, 5 years into their marriage, Irene does actually fall pregnant. She hopes that maybe Clark might change when the baby finally arrived, but her hopes are completely dashed when she finally gives birth to a baby girl. Clark will not tolerate the sound of that baby crying, because when she did, Clark would leave her in the garage to just cry it out. She is a brand new baby infant.
And that's the only way that she can tell you anything.
Anything. Exactly. Eventually, when the baby Adam is 10 weeks old, after being left to cry it out in a cold garage, she contracts pneumonia and Adam, that baby dies.
Really?
Officially, her cause of death is listed as pneumonia. But of course, what caused that pneumonia, right? Gross neglect.
Wow, I thought this baby was going to be Genie.
Nope, a couple more to go. Yeah.
No.
A year later, Irene gives birth a second time. This time it is a little boy. The baby is diagnosed too late with Rh incompatibility. It's a condition where the red blood cells are attacked by the body's immune system. And so within 2 days, this baby dies as well. They do have a third child. This is a little boy. His name is John. He is completely healthy. But just like the first baby, again, Clark will not tolerate any crying. And eventually, even preventing crying becomes primary for Clark. He even discourages Irene from talking to her baby. Like, don't talk to him because you're just going to rile him up.
That's horrible. Like, a mother should be singing, nursing, playing peekaboo, all those kind of things, right?
Again, you can't help imagine the story with zero color. There's no happiness there, is there?
No.
Of course, this effect of not talking to this baby does have an impact on John because by the time he is 4 years old, his speech is far behind other children his age. It's Clark's mother, Pearl, the one who was running the brothel, who first recognizes that something is wrong. And so she volunteers to take John to live with her for a few months. And Adam, it's only for a short time, but she nurtures him, she talks to him, and John makes incredible strides in his ability to speak. Like, there was speculation amongst doctors that John might even have some kind of developmental issue, but Pearl stepping in proves that that is not the case. It was this demand for constant silence that was all to blame for John not really keeping up with his speaking developments. Eventually, John does go back to live with Clark and Irene, but Pearl routinely steps in whenever she can. It actually becomes a bit of a cycle where John is just shuttled between his parents and his grandmother. It's like, come on, why do you have to keep doing this? Why can't you just get the message that you're not treating him well? You're not raising him like he should be raised.
Yeah, surely the grandmother must sense that something's up to the point where the child's better off somewhere else.
Do you make that call and call child services?
True, but
it's actually during this time where John has been shuttled between his grandmother and his parents' house that Irene actually becomes pregnant again. And so on the 18th of April 1957, Irene gives birth to Genie. It's not her real name, by the way, Adam. This has always been kept a secret to protect her identity. You can go online to find out what her real name is, but we're going to continue calling her Ginny just because of out of respect for her privacy. But it is publicly available out there.
I see.
Genie, when she is born, she does show signs of Rh incompatibility as well, but they do end up catching it very early, and so she's given a blood transfusion, which does end up saving her life. Adam, aside from this, Genie is completely healthy. At her first checkup with the nurse, records show that her weight was at the 50th percentile, completely normal. Her motor responses, her development markers, all bang on. At a later checkup, though, doctors discover that Genie has a congenital hip dislocation.
Is she born with that, or is that from abuse?
She's born with it. It's basically where the ball of the thigh bone doesn't firmly fit inside the socket. What this means is that Ginny has to wear a splint. It is very uncomfortable for her. Remember, she's an infant, and so as you can expect, she is way more upset than she would normally be. And again, if Clark has this aversion to noise, it is not going to end well. We don't know exactly how he responded, but what we do know is that at a later checkup, Genie's weight percentile had dropped, Adam, to around the 10th percentile.
What does that mean?
So, like an average baby would weigh at the 50th percentile, she was at the 10th percentile, so she was drastically underweight.
Wow.
People think that maybe Clark was possibly withholding food from her as a punishment for grumbling about having to wear this splint. But I also don't understand the logic there, because surely he knows that starving a baby would just make her cry even more. And so this cruelty just becomes like a cycle. The more she cried, the less she was fed. The less she was fed, the more she cried, right?
If she's having these regular checkups with doctors and things, are they not suspecting that she's being neglected?
Do you know what? There's no alarm bells right now. It's more of a case of, oh, by the way, there's more that you could be doing. Make sure she's exploring new foods or making sure that she's getting fed. And so I don't think there's cause for concern right now.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. But it just seems like because it's in the 10th percentile, it just feels quite a big difference.
That's right. Doctors also, Adam, start to notice that her development is also falling behind. She was missing, obviously, key milestones they would expect for her age. They don't think that anything is inherently wrong with her, but they kind of sort of encourage more encouragement than she might be getting.
Yeah. But then it doesn't sound like they're going to be doing that. But then what is the mother? She surely wants to perhaps be doing this, right?
I think so, yeah. However, when Irene tells Clark this, he reads this very differently. He reads this as Ginny being mentally disabled. And so from that moment on, he writes her off completely. He tells Irene and John not to talk to Ginny at all, not to engage with her. And somewhere in his twisted mind, he decides that she's going to die anyway.
That's awful. All they're saying is just interact with your daughter.
Yeah, and feed her a bit more. Now, I don't know where that comes from. I'm sure he's been abusing her and punishing her. But in his mind, he doesn't see this as his fault. Adam, this is worsened in 1958 when Pearl, Clark's mother, is killed in a hit and run while she is taking John out for the day. So the one person who might have been able to step in to help Ginny in this situation is now essentially gone. But also, Adam, poor John, he watched his grandmother get killed.
That's awful. And like now John's got no one to look after him really and treat him like a little boy, like he should.
that in itself, watching your grandmother be killed, that must leave its own kind of trauma, right?
Yeah.
As for Clark, he is devastated that he has lost his mother. He is already extremely withdrawn, and so this sends him spiraling. Clark ends up quitting his job, and the family, they move into Pearl's house on Gold Western Avenue in Temple City in California. Adam, he turns Pearl's bedroom into a shrine to her. He leaves it exactly as she left it, and he literally forbids anyone from going into that room.
He's definitely got some weird issues, right? Anyone that treats their mum's old room as a shrine. I'm getting like Ed Gein vibes.
Yeah.
I'm getting Psycho vibes.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense because, like, his mother neglected him. And you think about Ed Gein, his mother wasn't very nice to him either, but yet he worshipped her. It's very bizarre. But also, this is a very small house. It's just 2 bedrooms. There are 4 of them living in this house, right? But one of those bedrooms is now off limits.
So how does that even work?
Well, Clark ends up sleeping in his recliner. And every night he goes to bed holding a gun because he's increasingly more and more paranoid about the dangers that are lurking outside the house.
Okay, he's just not right.
Irene is forced to sleep on a dining room chair, and John is forced to sleep on the floor. He's a little boy. Ginny, on the other hand, she is shut away in the only bedroom completely isolated from the rest of the family. It is grim. She is never allowed out of this bedroom. Clark completely blacks out all the windows. The only light that comes into the room is from a small gap in the blacked out window, but it's so high up that she can't even see outside.
It's weird that they've given her the room.
Keeping her locked away.
I get that, but it also doesn't make sense because none of them have got their own room. It doesn't make sense. So Jeannie's stuck in this room. She can't look out the window.
No, this is all from 2 years old. Because she can't look out the window, she doesn't even know what a tree looks like. She's never even seen a squirrel. She can't even see the sky. It's awful. This dingy, dirty room is the entire scope of everything that she knows from the age of 2 years old.
So what does she have to do in this room? Like, if she can't see out, it's dark and dingy. She doesn't have toys, like you say. I think she had a magazine. Is that right?
I mean, there are a few basic bits of furniture. There's also a couple plastic raincoats hanging on hooks on the wall. The only toys, if you want to even call them that, is a small plastic thread spool and a couple plastic containers and also a fucking TV guide. By design, this room is to keep her separated from the wider family because according to Clark, she was mentally disabled. She was a disgrace to the family and he believed that she was going to die soon anyway. So he was just keeping her locked away until the inevitable happened.
He should not have been allowed kids. She needed to have been taken away.
When it comes to dinner time, food is literally dumped in her room. Adam, she is left to feed herself alone while the rest of the family eat in other parts of the house. Her meals mostly consist of baby food, right up until she's like 13 years old, by the way. And it's because she does not know how to chew solids. They'll occasionally give her milk-soaked cereal and the occasional boiled egg. But because she doesn't know how to chew these things, all she knows how to do is just break the food down with her hands. And as a result, it's not uncommon for this little girl to just end up choking on a boiled egg.
That's so weird to think that she didn't know how to eat.
Yeah, she doesn't. And when she does choke, she spits the food out naturally. Adam, she's just punished by Clark. And he does this by rubbing her face in it or beating her with a wooden plank that he leaves hanging in that room. And again, Clark puts this down to her being mentally disabled, the fact that she cannot eat properly. She can't even eat a boiled egg. But the thing is, though, she could easily have learned how to eat. Even if she's just given a chance to have a meal with another human being, she could have easily just watched how they do it, right? And she would have picked it up because she's not mentally disabled. She just needed to know how to do it.
How is Irene allowing this?
Adam, she's under control, right? There's not really much that she can do. Her whole world is closing in on her as it is. She is already oppressed. She's already beaten by him anyway. With her vision failing, what can she do?
I don't know. I just feel like that's her daughter. She must be able to hear her. She must know, like, fair enough, she can't see, but she must know, like, the state her daughter is in.
She does know, yeah. What Irene will do is she will occasionally sneak Genie food in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's anything that she can muster, and sometimes it's things that she can't physically eat because she can't chew, right? And so there will sometimes be bouts where she will end up choking. So she has to be very careful about what she sneaks her. Because she never uses her teeth, her baby teeth never fall out. And so by the time she is 13 and she is rescued, she literally has 2 full sets of teeth in her mouth.
So you can see both rows almost.
Yeah, they both come out together.
I see.
She also gets no interaction with anyone. And when someone does come in to feed her, to clean her, to put her to bed or whatever it might be, it's in complete and total silence. With Clark's demand for quiet across the house, like Adam, no television, no radio, and any conversation that happens in this house is just reduced to whispers, which Genie can't even hear, right? She can't even listen to the world that's happening out around her.
She's not developing, and then she's not playing with her brother. What's the brother doing? Does he believe his father in terms of like, yeah, she's mentally ill?
Do you know what? At the end of the day, I don't even think John, because he's was very small when Genie was born, right? And so like to him, he doesn't even know any better. There's also no language helping her to build a picture of her reality, right? There's no words to help her kind of dissect or categorize this very sad bedroom that she calls her entire world. So if she cries, tries to vocalize, or even hums, she is beaten with this wooden plank that Clark keeps in her room as a visual warning of what will happen if she does make any sound. What is even sadder is that she just also does not know any different. She does not know that this is wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Clark himself refuses to speak to her when he is telling her off or he is beating her. So instead, the way that he communicates with her is through growls and barks. Eventually, Ginny's splint is obviously taken off, and naturally, she becomes more curious and mobile around this little dungeon that she's been kept in.
And what age is she at this point?
So she's still around about 2, maybe 3. And of course, because the splint is off, she teaches herself how to crawl, and then eventually she learns how to kind of do her own version of walking. It's not great, but it is her own version of kind of walking around.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we'll go into kind of like when she is found, how the kind of clinicians describe how she walked and how she moved. It's very odd. It might still because also she's never using her legs, that kind of the muscles don't develop properly as well. So all these things will end up having an impact on how she walks. And because when she does walk, because it is this strange little genie walk, if you will, Clark just uses this as another example of her disability. It's like, you haven't taught her how to walk.
You never gave her a chance.
You didn't give her a chance. Exactly. And so, of course, when she starts shuffling around the room, she might try rattle the door. She might bang her plastic containers together. Of course, this outrages Clark. And so he ends up, Adam, strapping her to a potty chair by the waist and by her wrists. This is how she spends her entire day. And when it's time for bed, Irene or Clark will unstrap her. They'll put her in her crib. But to stop her from getting out, they place her into a sleeping bag that acts like a makeshift straitjacket. And because, of course, she is small, she's curious, nighttime is when she's able to at least stand up, albeit inside a bloody sleeping bag, right? She might even flump out of the crib to go and explore the room. And so to prevent this, Clark just places a wire mesh over the top of the crib, and it becomes essentially a cage. And so all day, she is strapped to a potty chair. All night, she is trapped in a cage.
She needs to go to the toilet. What's that situation?
She has never been taught any bladder control. She wants to go to the toilet. She goes right there and then.
And then she's just got to continue sitting on it, and what they come and change it, I don't know, probably not that often. That's just heartbreaking, actually.
This is all she knows. She has no idea that this is not normal. Even if she did have a sense of that, there is no way for her to even vocalize this, right? She is petrified to even show any kind of form of anguish because she knows she's just going to get beaten.
Yeah.
Her entire life, with no toys, no simulation, nothing to drive her wonder or imagination, you can imagine how you could become just a shell of a human being, an empty human being, because you cannot process what's happening to you. You can't process the world around you. Language is such an important thing, right?
I feel like Clark believed that she was mentally ill or whatever, or was going to die, but almost by treating her this way, it was almost encouraging for that to happen.
I don't buy it. I just think he just developed an aversion to her. Maybe he couldn't control the crying, so he wrote her off for that. He's using this as an excuse.
And was he punishing her or abusing her, hoping that actually maybe this kind of abuse would kill her?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? And honestly, I think that if Irene's eyesight had not been as bad as it was, I think maybe things might have been marginally better for Genie. Maybe I'm just being hopeful. But I think that her maternal instinct might have pushed against Clark's control just enough to maybe allow herself to offer her some comfort at least. And I know it doesn't seem like that now, but the fact that Ginny is even in a position to be rescued at one point is as a result of her pushing back, threatening that she is going to leave Clark. And so it's only the second time that she takes Ginny out into the world that she is discovered. But I think there is a want for her to not be treated in this way.
Yeah.
But at this moment in time, she is so dependent on Clark. I think it takes a lot for her to stand up to him.
Well, I guess she's depending on him, right? To help her around the house, for money, for the house, for food.
Everything, literally everything.
Yeah.
This is how Jeannie lives her life for 13 years. It is just so brutal. And the consequences of this are so severe. Because she spends her days either strapped to a potty chair or locked in a cage, her leg muscles, like I said, they don't develop like a normal child's. When she walks, she's extremely stiff. She walks with her arms held out in front of her, bent at the elbows, likely from all the years forced to be strapped in that same position. But also being confined to this small room also affects her vision as well. Normally you learn to focus things near and far, but because everything in Jeannie's world is so close, her eyesight never develops beyond that. She can only see a few feet ahead of her. And because sound is what gets her punished, she becomes essentially selectively mute. She can make noise, but she stays silent to avoid a beating. And so she never cries. Instead, her discomfort manifests itself in other ways, like she'll just scratch herself or she'll hit herself.
That's weird and really sad, actually, that she's learned that behavior to try and not make a sound.
And it's not like even if she did want to make a sound that there would be anything meaningful because she's never also been taught to speak. And so like she's never trained her tongue to make meaningful sounds. She is capable of making sounds though. And it is wild to think that this abuse continued for 13 years in a suburban neighborhood.
But then like friends, although maybe they didn't really have many friends by the sound of things, they became quite reclusive, as you said, but I would have thought neighbours would have known that they did have a girl at one point.
Well, Adam, neighbours didn't even realise that Clark and Irene even had a daughter.
Oh, really?
They would see John leaving and coming home from school. They just assumed that he was their only child.
Wow.
And John is abused too, by the way. Like he is routinely beaten and Clark exerts the exact same control over him that he does Irene. It seems to get worse after Pearl's death as Clark becomes more and more paranoid about the dangers that are lurking outside. And so when John comes home from school, he is instructed to first knock, identify himself before then being allowed in.
What is Clark worried about?
I don't know, Adam. Again, I think possibly he might have some kind of autism. I'm not going to say that is the reason for his paranoia, but I think that might explain this kind of methodicalness, this demand for silence. But then I think it's his mother's death that has driven kind of the paranoia. And so it's not just Ginny has been abused, the entire family's been abused, although what's happening to her, of course, is very different. John does understand enough to know what is happening to Ginny is actually wrong, though, because when he turns 18, Adam, he does run away from home. But what is tragic is that he never reports what is happening to his sister.
Oh, so he doesn't go back?
No. At this point, after years of living like this, I don't think even Irene is ever going to act on her own. Like, Ginny gets rescued by accident. In spite of that, I think Irene would have never have alerted anyone.
So John ran away and never thought, okay, my mum's being abused. I've got a sister who's trapped in a room that maybe he didn't really have much of a relationship with, but even still.
It is a guilt that he carries with him for his whole life.
But I guess he's in such a way where I need to get out.
Yeah.
But
protect myself, recover, and then maybe I can do something. But I don't think maybe he would have done. But by the time maybe he did think that he should have done something, Ginny's already been rescued.
I guess there's a risk that maybe he thinks if he does go back or whatever, then he might get trapped back in where he was. But he's allowed to leave the house and equally just go call the police, say what's been going on.
And like I said, after years of living like this, I don't think Irene was ever going to act on her own. She's heavily dependent on Clark and afraid that if she leaves, he will kill Ginny. Remember, that is also a fear here. She's not just fearing for herself, she's fearing for Genie.
So she's trying to, in some ways, look after her, but in a way that she thinks is the best way to do that.
Exactly. So I'm not excusing her lack of action, but I think I can understand the fear that she's living with. Still, Irene, like I said, she does have moments of clarity. She goes behind Clark's back. She does give Genie food whenever she can. It's meaningless to us, but within her means and her capabilities, this is kind of an act of compassion. It's very clear, right?
Yeah, and I guess rebellion a little bit as well against Clark, but it just seems so minute that but if maybe that's all she thought she could get away with.
It's actually one of these moments of compassion and kind of pushing back against Clark that leads to actually Genie being rescued. I think from what I can remember, she wanted to go and visit her mother and Clark said no. She threatened to leave him. Eventually he said yes. I think she takes Genie with her. And then a second time that happens is October 1970, when Irene has to go into town to process some paperwork for her disability payments. For some reason, again, she gathers that courage to take Ginny with her. Adam, I do wonder if Irene's vision is so bad by this point that she doesn't fully understand the state that Genie is even in.
Possibly, because if she doesn't know that, I guess, the way that she walks, moves, and stuff like that, she knows she probably doesn't talk or whatever.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, she probably just thought she's a normal girl.
I think maybe she might have a sense of how she moves, but how malnutrition she is, how little she is. I think when she sees Genie, she just sees like a blob.
And so she decides to take her out, and she's done this twice. Why does she decide to take her out that day?
I think it's part of this kind of rebellious period that she's in, right? She is threatened Clark. She said, I want to go visit my mother. I want to take Ginny. He's finally agreed. He said no, but then he's finally agreed. And she's like, okay, I think I can see a way forward for me demanding things that I want and for him to let up a little bit. And so it just so happens that she had to go in to do this paperwork. She takes Ginny with her. I don't know where Clark was on this day, but thank God she did take her. When Irene is in town, she ends up taking a wrong turn because instead of walking into the disability benefits department, she wanders into the social services office.
What are the chances?
I think it's in the same building or in the same area where all the government buildings are.
Oh, okay.
It's like, it might even be the same building, just a different department.
Yeah, kind of.
And she's blind.
Yeah, it's not like completely across town.
Yeah, exactly. When she approaches the counter, the staff instantly clock Ginny. Obviously, she looks a mess, but for her age, she's also extremely thin and fragile. But Adam, there is something about the way that she moves that catches them off guard. She doesn't so much as walk as shuffle forward. Her arms are seemingly locked at the elbows in front of her. Also, at the same time, everything around her is fascinating. Everything except for the physical people in the room. She doesn't look anyone in the eyes. She's just hyper-focused on everything else. Like, she cannot get enough of the mundane things that she is seeing in this office.
God, also, like, she's a 13-year-old girl, and Irene has managed to get her all this way. How does she keep an eye on her? Like, how has she not run off or anything? But maybe she's so, like...
I don't think these people are beyond the idea of putting her on a leash.
Possibly, yeah, fair point.
But it doesn't seem like she was on a leash. Otherwise, that would have been one of the things they clocked.
Yeah, but I guess Jeannie's not going to run away, or maybe she's scared, so she's going to keep with her mother.
Possibly.
But yeah, I imagine, like, the way that you've described her and moving in, like, they're going to ask some questions, is what's going on with your child?
100%. But also, imagine what Jeannie is going through in this moment. Like I said, it must be like she's been taken to a completely brand new planet.
And people are speaking to her, and she's not probably even understanding, right?
Oh, no, she can't understand anyone.
Yeah, so people are, like, coming up, are you okay? And she's, what is going on?
Yeah, who the fuck are you? The person behind the counter asks Irene about the girl, and she asks how old she is. She is shocked at him when Irene tells her that she's 13 years old because she looks 7. The woman behind the counter immediately calls a manager, and soon after that, they call the police. And Adam, Jeannie does not go home with Irene that day.
Good.
She is basically taken into care.
And what does Irene do in this? Is she like protesting? No, she's my daughter. Or is she like, good?
Possibly a little bit of that. But at the same time, remember, she's got to go home to Clark.
Well, you didn't really want her in the first place. But
yeah, but now they're busted.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing, because following this, both Clark and Irene are charged with felony child abuse, and they are both scheduled to appear in court a month later in 1970. Adam, here's where the fucking injustice is, because before the court date, Clark shoots himself in the head.
What a coward.
He even has the audacity to lay out his clothes that he wants to be buried in on the bed, as if he thinks he deserves that common courtesy after what he's done.
No, stick him in a hole in the ground.
He also writes a suicide note containing instructions on what should happen to John. And he says something like, oh, I love him or whatever. And in response to Jeannie, all he writes is, the world will never understand.
I think they will.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, though, what's key is that buried in that line is an admission, right? Like, he knew what he had done was completely wrong. And so with Clark dead, the trial ends up just focusing on Irene. And her defense, Adam, works in her favor. The argument is basically that, yes, what she allowed to happen was indefensible, but she too had been a victim of Clark and the abuse and the intimidation and had not knowingly or willfully participated in the cruelty towards Jeannie. And as a result, the criminal charges against Irene are completely dismissed.
Are they? And then what happens to her then? Does she just go back to her house then?
Yeah, essentially. So Adam, after her rescue, Genie is taken to a children's hospital in Los Angeles. It is shocking, again, as we pretty much know. Her weight is just 59 pounds. That is less than half the average for a girl her age.
What's that in kilos?
26 kilos.
Wow, that's nothing.
She's also 7 inches shorter than the average. She's also severely malnourished. They observed the same haunting movements that the people in the welfare office kind of experienced, like the hops and the shuffles, their hands held out, body hunched over by the hips. It's partly due to severe muscle and bone issues, but also because, Adam, like I said, no one ever taught her how to walk properly or hold herself properly. It's also clear that after years of moving like this, she is physically unable to straighten her arms or her legs.
I was wondering if the muscles are almost like they're so short that they can't like extend or anything like that. Is there anything they can do like over time, like to train or?
Quite possibly. Some of the early photographs I've seen of her, she still has her arms. I think it's also like a comfort thing. It's just what she knows is normal to her. So I don't know if over time maybe she could lengthen those muscles. It's got to be a muscle shortening rather than like the bones being set. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Adam, she also can't control her saliva. And again, it's because she's never been taught how to swallow. Like, she just keeps it all in her mouth. So she's constantly just drooling. And so, like, seeing her in this condition, naturally, the immediate response is to start focusing on Genie's rehabilitation. But then, Adam, the scientific and academic community get wind of this case, in inverted commas, and it basically begins Genie's next chapter because it ushers in a whole new realm of abuse. Even though there are good intentions underneath it all, there is also this pursuit of scientific knowledge. They need to settle debates that have been raging for decades. Tests need to be run as well. And slowly, that starts to take precedence over her care. Because remember, she is an incredibly rare situation. For years, these professionals have debated whether or not there was a critical period for language to develop in childhood development, a narrow window where certain things had to be learned, or maybe they might never ever be learned.
I mean, the fact that she can't even swallow to get rid of her spit makes me think, how do you teach someone that at 13?
Exactly, yeah. And so to them, suddenly you have this kind of real test case sitting in front of them that they can prove and test all of this. At this point, no one really knows what they're looking at. Has 13 years of abuse caused some permanent degree of mental incapacity? They're not quite sure. Or has the canvas for development simply just been left blank, now waiting for it to all be painted in? If the latter is true, and they suspected this might be the case, then Genie was an incredibly valuable test case because what they saw in her was extraordinary curiosity, not in a way that would suggest that she had a mental incapacity. She wanted to get close to everything to work out what the fuck it was. Her limited vision obviously meant that she had to do everything up close, but she'll grab objects, she'll put them right up to her face, just trying to understand what they were, how they felt, or how they worked. Do you know what I mean? So to me, this is what a toddler would exhibit. But because, of course, she's never been given an opportunity, it's now coming.
Yeah. I mean, are they trying to push her in that direction?
I think so. They definitely want to test that. Because right now she's taken it all in. And what clinicians suspected that they were watching was not an infant building those neural pathways at the expected age, but a 13-year-old doing it at a point where some scientists argued that it should already be too late. And because Genie's case overlapped several fields of study, this tug of war begins between scientists, psychologists, and neurologists. Everyone basically wants access to her. They band together to seek some funding and to set up a test program. Time with her is then divided equally between these different subsets of research teams. And very quickly, Adam, she starts being moved between different institutions. When one team's time with her kind of runs out before the other is finished, it literally causes serious fights. Like, it gets vicious. I also can't imagine just how terrifying this must have been for Genie herself.
What are her living conditions? Does she have a bedroom and a bed now? I mean, I imagine she does, but is she constantly being monitored and observed?
Yes, exactly. Now, she is put with a foster care, and we'll get onto that in just a second. So she does have that time away, but that itself causes massive issues. But literally at the same time, like the fear that she must be going through now, like she's now out in the world, that must be far too much for her. Everything is just overstimulation.
And then that's changing every, I don't know how often, but every few weeks or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, that's it. So everything is literally brand new for her and overwhelming. Remember, she also can't speak. And so she cannot say no. She can't even communicate what her needs are. Even crying, the most basic way of expressing distress or discomfort, was beaten out of her. So she can't communicate that. She doesn't know to communicate when she doesn't want it.
Yeah, and I get that she couldn't go into like foster care straight away because I can't imagine many families being equipped to kind of manage or deal with her, right? She needs a lot more support, but it doesn't feel right that she's being studied to the extent that it sounds like she is.
Yes, that's right. And it's not even started yet, really. Her first sessions with these teams of scientists in their retrospective kind of fields are mostly observational. They kind of want to start off with working out her level of intelligence and her capacity to learn. But it is almost impossible to work that out because so much of what she might be capable of is actually buried under fear. They sort of work out, though, in the end, that in most areas, she functions at a 3-year-old level. But again, only in some areas. In other areas, she is surprisingly advanced. She recognizes her own name. She understands simple words, but she also has this insatiable curiosity, which seems to be different from a curiosity exhibited by someone who might be mentally incapable. She really is this canvas that is now rushing in to be filled in. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It must be just incredible to watch. In other areas that really surprises them are how she's just not really that afraid of many things, considering what she's been through. However, she does have this intense fear of dogs, where her reaction is basically to recoil or to wet herself or to scratch at her skin. And of course, as we know, Clark would bark and growl at her, right?
God, yeah, because I was just thinking like she wouldn't have seen a dog before. And yet that typically for a kid is a lot of joy, dogs, cats, any kind of animals. And yet she's associating that barking with her dad and just being told off.
But Adam, over time, she starts to feel safer and more comfortable with her surroundings, and she does start to become more vocal as a result. She starts making sounds of curiosity and wonder at things that she is experiencing for the very first time. Like she'll coo and she'll be like, and she'll be like, make these really, that fills me with so much color in a story where it's been so devoid of color. Do you know what I mean? You can almost feel it rushing in now.
Yeah.
And so the research team think that maybe someone more experienced with special needs education should be brought in to assist. This is a woman called Jean Butler. And this is the woman that essentially becomes her foster mother. She's really taken by Ginny. And as well as teaching her everything, she also gets really invested in just making sure that she's okay. And so it's her that actually petitions and floats the idea of fostering her. The research team think it will kind of give her that a bit of stability in between kind of testing sessions and research sessions. It's a great call. And so Jean and Jeannie, under her guidance of the research team, they start undergoing a sort of crash course in literally life itself. It is so weird. Eating, walking, talking, getting dressed, using the toilet, right? Some things she picks up really fast. People do critic her intelligence though when like she's slow to pick up other things. But honestly, fuck you to them because like they're expecting results within weeks when toddlers sometimes take years to master some of these things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so the transformation for me is fairly dramatic. Within days, Jeannie is actively helping Jean dress her. Like it's not perfect, but she does understand that the clothes need to go on the body.
She gets that, and she's putting a leg through an arm or whatever it is.
Yeah. She starts learning how to control her bodily functions, realizing that you can hold it in until you need to go to the toilet.
I mean, that must be a relief for everyone.
Yes. One of the interesting things that Jeannie notes is that she gravitates towards things that are made from plastic. Her favorite possessions end up being a collection of 20 brightly colored plastic buckets that she keeps neatly stacked by her bed. They are her prized possessions.
Oh.
But also, the way that she interacts with them doesn't seem like pure fascination. It's more like a comfort, something that's familiar, right? Because plastic objects were some of the only things that she had to ever play with. So in a world where everything is completely brand new, these buckets become a source of safety and familiarity to her.
Yeah, that's interesting. Although, I mean, I get that growing up, that's probably all she had. But I don't know, there's all these things that she could have now. Surely like a teddy bear and things like that we associate. She wouldn't have had that.
And don't get me wrong, she wants all of that. But I think because it's so overwhelming, when she is at home and she's in private and she's in her bedroom, she can gravitate towards something like, oh, it's been a tough day. learning what a damn squirrel was. Do you know what I mean? I just want to kick back with a couple buckets and chill out. Of course, her fascination with the world only intensifies when she does go outside, which must be such a strange concept for her because it's not just objects now. Adam is literally everything. The sound of the wind, the sound of birds, traffic, for God's sake, the feeling of the wind on her skin. She is literally mesmerized by absolutely everything. Aside from it being so sad, it's just really incredible to understand what she must be going through.
I think that's the thing, because she's learning so much in a short space of time. Like, we learn all these things over years as a toddler. Like, I don't remember the first time I saw the sun or the wind or anything. But
did you experience that while you're conscious?
Yeah.
That's wild.
And at a point where you're probably going to remember this. I don't know what have memory or long-term memory functions like, but she's going to remember the first time she saw this or felt that.
Yeah, there's something inspirational in that, right? And there's very often not told in the story of Genie Wiley.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, no one should go through those circumstances to feel like this. But yeah, it's a shame. I'd love to know, obviously, where she ended up going to or what she's doing, because how she would talk about the past and what she's done since. But I don't know, perhaps we'll get there.
I'm going to have to disappoint you, Adam, because it doesn't pan out that way, unfortunately. But Adam, slowly basic language starts to emerge. At first, there are just single words, which shows that she has cognitive awareness of things, but is also now learning how to catalog the world in her mind, which is what language is, right? It's not just a way to communicate, it's a catalog of the world. And eventually, those single words then become strings of 2, maybe even 3. So we're essentially communicating through our catalog of the world. So rather than saying like ball, she might say then Ginny ball. Do you know what I mean? Probably the most memorable moment in her development, which also shows emotional awareness, comes when she's at a supermarket with Jean, her caregiver, and she literally says, Genie, happy.
Oh, that's really sweet.
It is. But also, Adam, remember, Genie is 13 years old. So biologically, she is developing and she absolutely has an awareness of what makes her body feel very good, but also no sense of what is appropriate. And so quite often in front of other people, she'll just go off and have a very good time by herself.
Oh my.
This is actually part of what I remember the most from watching The Mockingbird Don't Sing. It's the single memory that sticks out the most when I remember this film all those years ago. At the time, I was very young, but I vividly remember that scene where she's been driven somewhere, right? Likely to like another test or whatever. And she's just in the backseat, just having a whale of a time. And they have to explain to her, like darling, you do that in private.
Yeah. As a thing, you're trying not to shame her.
Yeah. I can't remember in the film how they dealt with it. It was back in the 80s. So normally there is a shame element to that.
Yeah, probably.
But I think in the way they handled it in the film in 2001, I don't think that they necessarily did shame her, which is the right way to do it.
Yeah, but the way she was going through this, did they shame her? Or you couldn't have done, surely.
I don't know, honestly. All I remember is just her in the backseat. But aside from this, one of the biggest breakthroughs comes when she knows enough language to start giving people an insight into what actually happened in her house. She begins stringing words together like, and this is heartbreaking, right? Father hit arm, no spit. Father hit big stick, big wood, Genie cry. Father is angry, father makes me cry. So all those types of words that she strings together.
But I thought she couldn't cry.
She's got the capacity to cry, but she knows not to cry. But Adam, most fascinating was that she seemed to have an understanding that he was dead because she says, father dead. So that's strange as well. Like in a world where everything's brand new, she has this concept of death.
She must have been taught that though, right? Like how else would you understand what the concept of life and death is? Possibly. Of course, it's a crash course in life. So maybe someone explained to her about her father. And so maybe she can now, she's like, where is this monster that hurt me? And they maybe had to explain to her what death was. This is basically how our observers get the sense that plastic items held some kind of significance for her, because they just seem to feature quite a lot in her drawings. It is clear that Ginny, despite everything she has been through, did exhibit a lot of the hallmarks of potential. But after 13 years, Adam, of learned behavior, the question was, how much of that potential could she physically reach? To the point where maybe she is a completely functioning human being, right? So researchers applied to the National Institute of Mental Health for funding to continue studying her. The clinicians, linguists, neuropsychologists
we're all interested in studying something called the critical period hypothesis. It's this idea that we're all born with this innate capacity for grammar and language specifically. So this is a language study, and that it has to be acquired before puberty, otherwise it will never fully develop. They wanted to know if Genie had missed that window. If she could somehow be taught grammar naturally through exposure to speech, it would then challenge the theory or support it. Like Ginny had already made huge strides with vocabulary. She could understand someone calling out an object and then repeat it back to you, but grammar is far more nuanced. Right now, she couldn't quite grasp like the proper structure. So it's more like ball Genie rather than Genie ball, which could then become Genie wants the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, it becomes very clear that she might never actually pick this up. For one, she never ever asks questions despite her intense curiosity. Maybe it's because she doesn't learn that actually other people are a source of knowledge and information. I thought that maybe now that she felt safe and she was adapting and assimilating and being cared for, maybe she would pick that up, but she doesn't seem to.
If she doesn't really know how to form long sentences to ask, what is this? Or what are you doing? Or what's that?
But you can also ask questions silently. Like you can point to something and go, qua?
Yeah.
She also struggles with pronouns, not being able to differentiate between the concepts of you and me. Now, that's not to say that she lacks self-awareness, because she does absolutely understand that she is a distinct person. But that awareness is not translating to the language and the grammar. So it looks as though this critical period hypothesis might be true, that there is this biological constrained window in early development in this specific area when normal first language acquisition is possible, and that missing this window can leave parts of grammar essentially permanently impaired.
I had no idea that we had to learn this before puberty, right?
Yeah, that's what it seems to be at this moment in time. Whether or not more research has been done since her, but that's what it's looking like at this moment in time. In most people, language is processed mainly in the left hemisphere, right? But in Genie's case, the hemisphere has been underused because of years of not triggering the neurons that are activated through learning language. And so scans suggested that her right hemisphere was taking on the linguistic functions it would not normally be able to handle. So this does shift how scientists think about the concept of brain plasticity. That's what they want to test. And this testing does, I think, become a bit much. And I'm not sure if Genie is aware of this, but regardless, it does seem to take priority over recovery. And like just being a 13-year-old girl, because people are forgetting that she does need to also live and exist as a young girl in a childhood that she's missed out on.
Yeah, like she must be wanting to play with toys and things like that. I feel like she's going to be curious about that kind of thing.
Exactly. Jean recognizes this, and she starts to understand that this is starting to impact her stability. And so, after a rubella outbreak, Jean starts isolating Genie at home and limiting researchers' access to her, which at first you would think is very noble. The research team, however, see this very differently. In the trailer of the film that I watched in preparation, because I haven't watched the film, Jean is seen telling someone that Genie is actually going to make her incredibly rich. And so it's not clear whether or not that's actually true, but the research team frames this as Jean positioning herself as the primary authority in Genie's recovery. And so she will be cited in academic papers as the person who taught her how to speak or was really instrumental in her progress.
But is this the dramatized version?
That's how it was positioned in the drama, where she is overheard saying someone, but what they accuse her of is keeping her quarantine so she can take a credit for stuff. That's fact.
That's fact. Oh,
yeah.
Really?
So they complain. Genie is removed from Jean's care. She is sent to live with a couple of the researchers, David and Marilyn Rigler. They're a husband and wife, and they're absolutely on the research team. And Adam, that is now a conflict of interest that is now being built directly into her care, right? The people raising her are also the people who are studying her. There is now no separation. And so between 1971 and 1975, she is constantly tested, recorded, observed, written about. And at some point, the question becomes, is this care or is this just perpetual research?
It feels that way because that's another, 4 years? How old is she at this point? Like 18?
She will get to 18, yeah.
That feels
75.
like a long time.
Yeah.
Why are they not? Well, I don't know how easy it is to rehabilitate, but I feel like, sure, study whilst you're trying to get her to be a functioning adult.
Yeah, but it's not happening now because they suspected that Jean was trying to keep control of her. Nobody is now there to seemingly say, enough testing. Just let her watch a damn cartoon.
Yeah, she feels like a lab rat or something.
And so instead, Genie's entire life becomes tangled up with their careers. That is the thing. in their careers is all about them. It's got hardly anything. They might have some sympathy for her and some compassion, but it's definitely not taking precedence over her well-being. Adam, eventually in 1975, Genie turns 18, and legally for the research team, this whole arrangement now becomes much trickier. Funding for their research now comes up for renewal, and Adam, it is not renewed. It's because people in the camp of let Genie just be a child were now raising concerns to the National Institute of Mental Health about the ethical practices and the data collection problems in the study. They were like, you're testing her too much, and there's a massive overlap between your testing and her care. Where is the separation?
Right.
But on top of that, when she turns 18, the whole situation becomes a legal nightmare as well. It could be that a factor that played into them not renewing her kind of funding. Like now we have to tackle kind of the fact that she's not a warden of the state anymore.
It also makes me feel like now that they're putting back on this funding, and I don't know, people aren't going to be able to continue to study her in the same way, where does that leave her? Because if they've just been focused on studying her and not rehabilitating her, what's her life now?
Well, you would think like, well, we can put her into kind of care, right? But the thing is, though, the care system is not set up to deal with a nuanced case like Genie.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. And so the research team starts to wind down, although some researchers like Genie's linguist, a woman called Susan Curtis, they do continue working with her, but it's less structured. Of course, there's no funding involved. And so Susan Curtis has to do this kind of pro bono almost.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, it's around about this time that Irene appears back on the scene and she petitions for custody.
Really?
Adam, she gets it. It's because, remember, the court dismissed her case, right? And so Genie goes back to live with her mother. It is such a bad move, not only because Irene, regardless of being acquitted, was still one of Genie's abusers, but also Genie needs specialist care. Don't send her back to a woman who is almost completely blind.
Exactly. I'm really surprised that they did that. But is it because of the funding was pulled and therefore it's like, well, where else is she going to go?
Exactly. Right. There's no funding. I am a scientist. This is my living. I'm not equipped to care for her or do this pro bono. And so the sad reality is she has to go back and live with Irene. And the fact that Irene is not equipped for this is a reality that Irene is fully aware of.
What's she going to do?
Exactly. Irene also files a lawsuit against the research team and the hospital, alleging that Genie had been subjected to excessive testing and that the scientific publications had been prioritized over her recovery, which of course has resulted in emotional harm. So she's not wrong there, but also at the same time, I think suing them is also a way of her maybe getting some funding in order to facilitate her care.
But I get that Irene is a victim of abuse as well. And I can understand as a mother, maybe she does want to do right. But this is just not the right decision.
No.
And equally, like, she's going after these research people saying, oh, you aren't treating her right. Well, hello, you weren't treating her right for 13 years.
Exactly. I do wonder whether or not, because you see this happen in these big high-profile cases all the time, right? Some lawyer comes sniffing around and goes, clearly something dodgy has happened here. Let me kind of like pander at the mother, promise her like a ton of money or whatnot. And maybe they've kind of ushered in this lawsuit. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised. But in court, the researchers, they deny all accusations, saying that her rehabilitation was built into their work. But the prosecution say, well then, why was your funding not renewed? And then they pull out all the ethical concerns that were raised by the National Institute of Mental Health. And eventually, they're forced to settle out of court. And even today, we don't know the details of how much money was awarded.
What to Irene and Genie.
Exactly, as a result of this lawsuit. But here's the thing, Adam. With Irene now Genie's primary caregiver, it quickly becomes clear that regardless of like what the settlement was, I'm not sure what came first, but it's just too much for her. Irene knew it would be. She, of course, needs specialist care, especially to ensure progress doesn't regress. That's the most important thing. Genie is also unpredictable in a way that Irene just cannot keep up with. And so Irene, she seeks assistance, but instead of providing it, they decide that it's in Genie's best interest to place her into the foster care system.
Oh, so after all of that, she still gets taken away.
Yeah, it is reportedly a mixed bag. Some of the families treat her really well. Others are awful, or they just simply do not understand the level of care that she needs. Their frustration turns into punishment, sometimes even physical punishment, with one family reportedly punching and kicking her.
But hang on, a foster family that's allowed to take in someone and they're abusing this foster child.
Yeah, it is so crazy. And I'll explain in a second, but as a result, a lot of the progress that Genie had made literally starts to reverse. One foster family doesn't even realize that she has the capacity to speak.
How many families is she going through?
Exactly. Because she's been moved around so much, there is no stable baseline for anyone to properly assess her needs. So, for example, she can leave one family 10 pounds lighter than when she arrived. She will speak less. She will eat less. She will withdraw more. And then so that becomes the new starting point for the next family. And so at each checkup, it might look like she's only dropped slightly. But when you zoom out, the regression is stark across all the placements. Do you know what I mean? Because no one is joining up the dots.
And who is finding that out then? Who's going, actually, no, there is a big problem here?
It takes a while for that to eventually happen, but they do. And so she loses so much of the progress that she had previously made. She also stops using the toilet. Instead, she's holding in her bowel movements. Psychologists suggest that this is a way of her exerting control over her own body at a time when she has very little or almost no control. But come on, Adam. I guarantee there must have been a time when she was punished for wetting herself and so was now afraid to do so.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, when she is eventually placed with a better family, it is just too late. The damage has already been done. And so while I accept that the research team were testing too much, Genie was still flourishing in that environment far more than she did in a poorly vetted care system that failed to equip these families with the tools that they needed to properly care for her. So I'm really torn because she should have been put into a position where she could get all the nurturing that she needed without the testing. That would have been ideal. But the reality is, if she's not been tested on, she's in a welfare system that is just not equipped for her.
I think that's it. Like, it's such a rare case. And that testing is obviously pushing her and she is learning, but she just needed a home to go to. And whether that should have been Jean, I don't know if she was doing the wrong thing or not, but it seemed like that was a fair balance at that moment in time.
Exactly, yeah. I'm not sure what to make of the allegations against Jean. I don't know if that was fiction or it was just like a way to take her out of her control.
Yeah.
If she did say, Jeannie is going to make me incredibly rich, that is such a shame. But even in spite of that, even if that was the case, I still think that Jean would have still cared for her better because she would have been in one stable family. She would have been with a special education teacher that was proven to be making massive strides.
Yeah. Like, it feel like she would have been better off.
It's better the devil you know.
I think so. Even if she's with Irene and yet she's still going to these, I don't know, testing or medical center or whatever it was. Maybe there could have been hybrid there, but if they pull the funding, I can understand it. And she's not a 3-year-old that's going to grow up into a functioning adult going around these foster homes. Completely different case.
And so, Adam, by the end of the 1970s, the experiment is basically over. With the foster system completely failing her, Jeannie is eventually placed into an institution in California. Like I mentioned, some researchers still try to keep in touch with her. They check on her from time to time, especially people like Susan Curtis. Like, they seem to be really close. But because of the lawsuit, even she is eventually barred from contacting her altogether. And that is so sad because some of these people actually became her friends, right? Like, yeah, they were caregivers and they were passionate about her, but they were also her friends. And honestly, Adam, we don't really know much about what happened to Jeannie after this. Some of the people who had been close to her say that the last time they saw her was at her 29th birthday party. And even then, the regression was apparent. She didn't speak much anymore. She avoided all eye contact whenever she could. Yes, she is somewhere that is taking care of her, but they're not helping her thrive. And that's the biggest shame.
They're just feeding her, putting her to bed, sticking her in front of a TV, probably.
Yeah. The problem is we know that with the right nurturing, she has the absolute capacity to absolutely thrive. And now they're just treating her as like, well, she just needs to be cared for. Bum wiped, fed, go to bed, have a bath. It's awful. The last thing we do know is that as of the year 2000, she is living in an adult care facility. We don't know if she is still alive today. If she is, she would be around about 70 years old. Adam, as for her brother, he did give an interview in 2008 where he talks about the shame that he's had to carry with him for not doing something to help Jeannie. And I say fair. I understand that the situation is challenging, but still, you probably should have done something.
You had a chance to do something, right?
You did enough to save yourself. You could have done something to save your sister. Anything. Just tell someone.
Yeah. It's almost like she's been given this sentence by her father saying that she was mentally ill. And that's how she's now been brought up. And people are just gone, yeah, look, she is.
Yeah, there is some truth in saying like there is a time window where you need to be introduced to the world, right? And if you miss that window, it can be extraordinarily difficult. And with her, she could have potentially recovered. To what degree, I'm not sure. But she was clearly damaged by not being allowed to flourish, not being nurtured, not being held, not seeing things when she was on those formative years.
Not being taught or anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
just how sad.
But John also talks about how guilty he felt for never visiting her after she was rescued. Apparently, he only visited her once.
Yeah, like how much did you care then?
Yeah, exactly. He does eventually die in the year 2011. Irene, she dies in 2003. She's 87 years old at the time. And Adam, Genie's story poses this question. What does it actually mean to save someone? Because yes, she was rescued from horrific childhood neglect, abuse, and trauma. But rescue should have been the beginning of her recovery, not the end of someone else's responsibility. Getting her out of that room saved her from Clark, but did it save her from being mishandled, studied, moved around, failed, and then eventually forgotten? Because that's essentially her story. And I think that is the lesson her story leaves behind. Saving someone is not just opening a door. It is what you do after she stepped through. And I don't think that was handled very well. But also, I have a massive problem with Genie's story as it is more commonly known to the world. It is a story that is told through this cold clinical lens in the pages of academic papers. It's been recounted in lecture halls, psychology classrooms, and textbooks. People have written literal dissertations on her. It's not about Genie. It's about language and childhood development. That's not about Genie. Genie is just merely a reference point. And I think that's awful. Of course, that matters. But with every lecture, every debate, every academic discussion, what gets less emphasis is that this was a little girl who was abused, neglected, and failed by the system that was supposed to protect her. Where is that paper?
Yeah, rather than this study or experiment or whatever it is. Do you think it would be different now? Because this was in the 60s and 70s. And I feel child welfare was a bit different back then. Do you think she would have got better treatment now? If this was in the news this week and the next steps, what do you think would have happened?
I think we know a lot more. But also remember, during her time after she was rescued, was during the 70s, and from the Satanic Panic episode, we know that fueled the Satanic Panic was this overemphasis on protecting children. So she was rescued at a time when that was like, any child in danger, even if you suspect, let us know. But I think we just didn't understand how to then handle it and treat it. Like, we're still learning about psychology and childhood development and things like that. But to answer your question more directly, I think it would have been a lot better today. But still, with funding being cut and limitations and all these types of things, I don't know if it would have been better.
Yeah, would it have turned out any different at a certain point? I'd like to think that she would have had perhaps more of a sort of family or home to be in. Of course, no doubt that there would be studies to try and also get her to develop. But yeah, have we learned our lesson? I'd like to think so.
I hope so. Because what seems to be devoid from her story back in the 70s is a lack of compassion. But also, from her story, where are the lessons that we can extract from her story that tell us something about the depravity of human nature, but also the compassion of human nature as well? But by far the biggest thing missing from her story, and it's not because it's not been documented, it's because, Adam, it was never allowed to happen. And that is the survival aspect of her story. Because the story was supposed to end with Genie overcoming all the odds, flourishing in the face of adversity, and coming out on the other side as hopefully an inspirational figure. Someone that we can go, fuck me, look what's happened to this little girl, and look what humanity has done to rehabilitate this girl. And that never happened. But the way that her case is handled, with the pursuit of knowledge being placed over her well-being, meant that her survival story was never even given a chance.
Yeah, it feels like she's just been in limbo almost ever since.
She's trapped in what's happened to her, basically. Like, the impact of all that abuse and neglect means that she wasn't able to break out of what she'd taught herself. It's wild. But anyway, Adam, that is the story of Genie Wiley.
Yeah, it is a really sad story. I think I was familiar with it, but didn't really know the details. And like you say, you just wish there was a happy ending. And it's actually really harrowing to know that that didn't really happen.
She deserved a happy ending. more and more, I'm surfing Reddit, especially the Today I Learned subreddit. Maybe it's one of our kind of freaks, but we'll do an episode and then I'll be on Today I Learned, and there'll be like a Today I Learned about the episode that we've done, like within the few days of being released. I'm wondering if there are freaks out there posting our stories.
Some Reddit fiends.
Yeah, Reddit fiends. But this is where I picked this up. Someone had posted a little TIL about Genie. I was like, I remember this girl. She's the girl who was having a good time in the back seat. I'm going to do an episode of her, and then I'm going to watch the movie.
Well told.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you fancy maybe doing some shout outs for this week?
Let's do it.
End on a lighter note. Guys, you should know the drill by now. The Compendium is not just a podcast, it is also a legally regulated place of work who is hiring. So guys, head over to the Compendium podcast, click the jobs tab in the footer, pick your favorite role, fill out your application form, and we will read the best one.
All you have to do is tell us all about your position. What do you do? What are your duties? What incidents have you had to deal with? What is life like at the circus for you?
Yes, absolutely. And Adam, our standout performance review comes from Sarah Roberts, who is our top hat security analyst. Sarah protects executive hats from theft, sabotage, and unexplained dimension hopping. She oversees the secure hat vault and files incident reports when a top hat vanishes mid-bow, especially if it returns smelling like smoke and arrogance. Do you fancy reading out Sarah's day-to-day responsibilities?
Of course. So as the Compendium's top hat security analyst, she runs a strict daily hat count. The budget currently only allows Kyle to own 2 hats, but nevertheless, it's important work. If anything, having only 2 hats makes the pressure worse. There's absolutely nowhere for incompetence to hide. Her responsibilities include checking that both hats are safely locked inside the secure hat vault, carrying out rigorous inspections for signs of tampering, feather interference, or possible assassination attempts. What?
Oh, really?
Relations between Kyle and the monkeys have been tense lately. They have, and I refuse to be caught off guard by a politically motivated hat theft. Those pesky monkeys.
Yeah, that's it.
I also carry out regular cleaning of all top hats, which is something I sometimes feel goes unappreciated. Yeah, Kyle, why are you not appreciating this? You've got 2 hats, and they're always clean.
Well, that's good. She doesn't have to clean much, does she?
People notice where a hat vanishes into another dimension, but nobody says thank you when it comes back lint-free.
Oh, good.
She's well suited to this role because she used to work the cloakroom at a BDSM club. Wow.
Wow.
That was, you have seen some things.
That took a turn.
So she knows how quickly formal wear can turn dingy, sticky, or legally complicated. Especially after working with Kyle for just 2 weeks.
2 weeks!
So in terms of major incidents, she says at her last job in a BDSM dungeon called Spank and Circumstance, a guest's top hat went missing for 43 minutes and returned damp, warm, and smelling faintly of sausages.
Oh no!
She strongly suspected it had been used as a torture prop, and we know the guest would not be pleased. Within 4 minutes, she restored the hat to its former glory, using only steam, discretion, and a level of professionalism I am still not emotionally ready to discuss.
I'm wanting to know how she got the smell of sausages out.
I mean, in 4 minutes, that's working miracles.
Is that what she doesn't want to discuss?
I think so.
The removal of the sausages
How
smell?
did she do it? She will not expand any further.
There you go.
And this does prove that she's the best person for the job.
Oh, good. Yes.
In terms of her KPIs, she would describe herself as alert, practical, and only slightly suspicious of magicians. She can spot a tampered hat, a fake feather, and a man pretending he came in wearing that from across the room. Her only weakness is that as her experience in this field has grown, she's developed a strong aversion to having her stomach pumped. The less said about that, the better.
That's how she got out the sausages smell.
Very good. Well done, Sarah.
Guys, so if you want to be featured on a future episode, then remember, head over to thecompendiumpodcast.com, click jobs in the footer, and send in your application. We'll read the best one on a future episode.
Right then, shall we do the outro?
Let's do the outro. And guys, so that brings us to the end of another fascinating foray into the Compendium, an assembly of fascinating things.
If today's episode has sparked your curiosity, then please do us a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app. It truly makes a world of difference and helps more people discover the show.
And for our dedicated freaks out there, don't forget that next week's episode is already waiting for you on our Patreon. And as always, it's completely free to access.
And if you want even more, then join our Certified Freaks tier to unlock the entire archive. You get to delve into exclusive content and get a sneak peek at what's coming next.
Oh, this is where we could put in the keychains jangling. Because you also get a keychain.
Yeah.
Dangle, dangle, dangle. We drop new episodes every Tuesday. And until then, remember, opening a door is not the same as saving the person behind it. See you next time.
See ya.
Are you overwhelmed by the current state of the world? Do you need a reason to laugh?
Well, do I have a podcast for you? I'm Grant.
And I'm Maya.
And we're, well, I Laughed, a podcast that does a deep dive into your favorite special little interest areas.
And even though the topics might not always be lighthearted, we do our best to find the funny in the mundane moments.
Well, I Laughed. New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your shows.
Because, well, I laughed, and we hope you do too.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.